starting now. Okay, good morning. So did everybody get my prompt for the first discussion response? Are there any concerns or questions? Okay, everybody's pretty cool with what I put out there. Did you watch the video and the email? Okay. Again, do not freak out because I know that you don't know what I would be expecting this first time out, other than what I put in as far as, my little handwritten note here and the rubric. So, and don't freak out of the rubric either. So that's something that you would almost get to the point of ready to write an academic journal article, which if you did get to that point, I would be with you recommending that you continue on to graduate school. So I thought at least put it out there, but I temper my expectation this first time out. Okay, yeah. Other than that, let's there's one other thing I wanted to talk about. Yeah, let's as far as information, there's something I've been wanting to do. Everybody can hear me? Okay. You might see me either Tuesday or Thursday, or working remotely. We'll pop up on Tuesday or Thursday, and I'll be somewhere else remotely. It's kind of the idea I've been wanting to do. That means traveling out of my cubicle here and being somewhere along Highway 50 and Arkansas Valley, related to where we at, like starting next week, which probably I need to make a slight adjustment to, for two reasons. The stuff that we have seen with Boggsville, to be honest with you, kind of caught me off guard, because when I started this class and I thought about the history of Arkansas Valley agriculture and labor, I noticed that no scholar, historian, or professor, teacher, unless anybody can correct me if they know anything else, nobody has taught anything about agriculture and labor history of Arkansas Valley. CSU, probably Fort Collins, is probably, of course, taught on agriculture overall, state of Colorado or within the region here, but specific to Arkansas Valley, Upper Arkansas River, I don't think so. So there was a lot of stuff I had to pull out that nobody else had within a class, within teaching. So a lot of the focus, most of my time with the Oral History Project in Southeast Colorado, when I saw the intersection or the kind of filtering down to that area every time I look at agriculture, labor overall there in Arkansas Valley. And I thought, well, guess what? I think I can get a good picture here, start to get a good picture. And a lot of it was me looking at individuals or talking to individuals a lot. So yeah, Boggsville so that's what I'll talk about today a little bit. And I hope everybody enjoyed Anita the other day. I hope that was informed and helpful. So
Professor Stefan, I hate to interrupt you, but Tori's trying to get on to the video.
Oh. Okay, so I'm gonna set up go in back to the Zoom settings for this meeting. And Victoria, I'm sorry. Good morning. I know you were hanging out there for a minute. I think I'll reset the setting to where you come into the Zoom meeting and I don't have to admit you. You guys come on automatically. So I'll try to remember to do that. Okay, we were talking, good morning, Victoria. We were just talking about everybody's good to go with the prompt for the discussion response. June 2nd is due. Are you good with that? Okay. But also just my little blurb on, talk about Boggsville. All right, let's go ahead and go before I start to ramble. And I wanted to look at the syllabus, but I think it's kind of my tool to see where we at, where I should be. And one of the things I do want to bring up is whether, and get feedback from everybody here for a moment, is looking at the syllabus and the schedule. And by the time so I've had you guys make a decision by week 6, your midterm, whether you're going to go with the statement of need and a statement of protest. And one of the things I discussed or asked of you in the prompt is whether or not at this time, figure out whether, do you see a connection with like what we've looked at so far, agriculture, but also labor, but has demographics, and later on looking at statistics or analysis of hemp starting to grow, and whether or not you see that connection, and whether or not, I mean, is there anything that of concern in that regard? Is there something that we might be missing? Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot more stuff to provide to you guys later on, but what do you think is something that you're out there in the clouds unintentionally, and I'm putting you guys out there too far, maybe a little bit more evidence or something? Is anybody concerned there to the point you can't do the discussion response? No? Okay. All right. Well, I was thinking about that the other day, and I was like looking at the syllabus and going, well, I best, you know, yeah, that's part that I was concerned about. So let's go ahead and, you know, I don't try to do death by PowerPoint too much. So I like to just, it's time I learned how to do these slides. And I don't want to bore you with the slides, but I'm talking to, let's see, okay. All right, let me switch around. And let me put you guys somewhere back on the, can everybody see the slides?
Nope.
Oh, of course not. Okay, there we go. All right, so I figured out the slide situation here and blow it up. So really, let's not dwell too much on Borderlands right now. We'll just go right into it. And I want to go ahead and back up a little bit so we can explain a little bit more of Boggsville. As you know, in earlier part of the 19th century, after or even with this Spanish Empire, and then Mexican independence, they pushed out land grants to those who, first of all, to kind of cover their empire boundaries, and that out in the very frontiers, out there in isolated areas, mostly in the northern part of New Mexico as part of Mexico, and that was land grants. And as you saw or heard from Anita, how Thomas Boggs, through his wife Romalda, was able to get a part of one of these land grants, which was the, does somebody know the name of it? Remember? It was also called the Los Alamos Grant, but also the, now I'm starting to forget, the Vigil and St. Vrain Grant. All right. But as you can see here, there were other land grants in northern part, frontiers of New Mexico. A lot of this grants was pushed out because they saw the threat from the U.S. and settlers, Anglo settlers coming through by the 1848, 1850s, 1860s. Of course, Texas, Republic of Texas. And here you see the center, the Sangre de Cristo Grant, Maxwell Grant. As you can see, that is where Colorado and New Mexico border will become. But this is where a lot of people came together but became isolated from Mexico City for several hundred years, literally. And by the time 1800s came around, there's already been to the point to where they had a unique cultural group and language, dialect. So that's the Nuevo Mexicanos. We'll get into that here in a second. Oh, by the way, one of the things we got to understand here, this is tens or if not hundreds of millions of acres or hundreds of millions of square miles of land. As you could probably kind of tell from, because it's so remote and so much land and so open, but also mountainous in varied areas, of course, as you see southern part of Colorado, like the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, and the San Luis Valley would like hang out here where the Sangre de Cristo Grant is. So we have taken advantage of Anglo settlers, the ranchers, those who wanted a ranch, take advantage of this vast land that there was no way that, like for the Spanish Empire or even Mexico, to enforce their boundaries because it's so vast. Because you barely have a few people there, but also this group of people already being isolated because of geography. All right. Let me go back up. So what we see here is, like you already saw the picture of the Maxwell land grant. Afterwards, in regards to 1848 and the U.S. coming through, you saw a lot of controversy and actual, you saw how the U.S. used their power within a legal system and a political system. Imperial, all right, imperial is just trait of that power, even though the U.S. Uses, it's like you have something, document like the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and you start out real good, but putting into practice, you see the failures there. So that's how much I'll say into that. All right, to the point to where, or as you probably already learned, that there was a lot of different perspectives on how that was applied to different groups of people. All right, and of course that was complete, still being far as equality there and liberty. So I'm going on a tangent, but you see after 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was supposed to enforce all these land grants, or those who had these land grants already, and they were still supposed to still have those rights. But as you could see, that was contested through legal, violent means. So Nuevo Mexicanos, that comes into play. So I won't get into the Gadsden Purchase 1854 too much there. So let's go ahead and move through. So as you remember, Nita telling you, the what was also called the Los Animas Grant. Boggsville, does everybody remember? We didn't really, I should have showed you this while she was talking. So this is pretty much southern Colorado. And, oh, Derek. This would okay, here's Pueblo, and of course, southern Colorado, and you go down where today you got Highway 50, but you see how at the time, the Arkansas River was the border before 1848. All right. But after the treaty, of course, then it was just boundary went down to the Rio Grande. So the land grants were becoming vulnerable because of that pressure from the east. And so there's La Junta, and here's the purgatory, and 12. Yeah, right here, 12. Romalda Boggs. So that's Boggsville. All right. And as you can see how this land, what is unique about this, I think this is important. As you'll see in a moment, something that Anita didn't address was who inherited this land. Is somebody, it was Romalda Boggs, anybody? It was the women, right? Mm-hmm. Where did Romalda come from? What was her background?
Wasn't she the niece of Cornelius or somebody like that?
What's that? I'm sorry, say that again.
Wasn't she the niece of Cornelius? And that's how she inherited?
So the part of Taos, so northern New Mexico, state of New Mexico. So the northern part of New Mexico, along with the southern part of Colorado, was a unique set of land, and became a unique set of people, Nuevo Mexicanos. So yeah, this state, it was the women that inherited it, and as you probably already can tell why Thomas Boggs married her, along with, for example, the people that this grant was named after, Saint Brand, or what's the other guy? I keep forgetting his name. Vigil. Okay. So you saw a lot of intermarriage, and worked to the advantage of both of them, right? Because would that be fair to say, to some degree? Because it's important to point that out, because as you'll see later on, within the 20th century, you're going to start to see, well, what level of rights did women have at the time, or later on. You'll start, well, even, Anglo. Of course, this is something that was of a lesser degree, but here's something that at the time you had women inherit land within this other different group of people in different culture. All right. I like to mention Charles Audubys. Okay. You see how they got his claim over here? Number one. Where is number one? I can't see it. Anyways.
Up there by the Arkansas River.
Okay, thank you. All right. George Audubey is related, is a descendant of Charles Audubys. He's the one that we'll get into later, once we get into mid part of the 20th century and the Chicano movement, surprisingly. Okay, so what this also shows is the encroachment of cattle ranchers here within the this particular land grant, as you see, from the 1880s and 1890s. So, by 1873, right? What did Anita tell you about what happened, or what was the period of time that Boggsville thrived. About
The 1870s.
A little bit early, 1860, 1866,
Okay.
right? Till about 1873. Why did it slow down by 1873?
Because of the railroad, right?
Yes, yes. And the railroad brought a lot of different things other than the railroad. The tracks was put on land, and the land immediately around those railroad tracks, the railroad company owned. Okay, and they had a lot of power as to where people and places went. Incredible amount of power. So they didn't choose to go to Boggsville. They chose another Los Animas up here. As you can see, there's two Bent. She mentioned Bent. I think that Charles William Bent, they're brothers or something like that. Old Bent's Fort was further to the east. Okay, there's still like a historical site there, or rebuilt. This is Bent's new Bent's Fort. They moved because of the railroad and the military. Okay, and as you can remember, Boggsville thrived with agriculture and cattle and sheep because of what Fort Lyon and the U.S. Army. So let me go ahead and tell you the rest of the story about Boggsville. I'm kind of being nice about that because I don't want to Anita gave you a very important information about the first introduction of agriculture in Arkansas Valley. But what she didn't tell you is about what she did, what the agriculture within a cultural lens. Because as you probably remember hearing her, that I asked her the question about the national park, National Park Service looking at it be part of the park system a few years ago. And do you remember what she said to bolster that justification? What she's working on now? Do you remember what she said?
They're working on the story of the women there.
Yes. Well, why do you think that she's working on the story of those three women?
To bolster the multicultural aspect of the site.
Can you guess, anybody, what specifically is that cultural aspect as compared to possibly the Western part or the Anglo settlers, white settlers coming in? Okay, we already talked about them inheriting the land, of course. Of course, the men. Who were these men that they married to? What type of men were they? What they work as? Were they farmers?
They're traders and ranchers.
Yes, fur trappers. It was, remember, early in the early part of the 19th century, and it's something I should add it on here. Where they were fur trappers. The fur came from, buffalo skin, of course, and beavers. Beavers were the luxury fur, making beaver skin hats. So there's an important thing I think I should have was going to put in here for today's slides is the aspect of other than industry affecting how one works and labor. All right, I know I still got to get into just finding that labor part, but I forgot my thoughts. What was one of the first things that people did, the pioneers, came in to do at the time? I already mentioned fur trapping, but also ranching, sheep. But what was the other part what other industry was going on in the West? One of the first things. Gold, right?
Mining?
Yes, exactly, exactly. So with these, I know there's different. The thing is, we can find in common with agriculture and industry, mining, for example, or even ranching, or the type of agriculture that we'll see later on, is what we can call uh, extracting the particular item. Extractings, particularly like mining. Mining, you extract a certain item, so some mineral or basically rock, gold, silver, mercury, which was used to extract the gold out of the rock. Um, but always when there's an extraction, there is, so what could cattle be considered extracting a certain, for profit? You'll soon see that you're extracting someone's labor. And this is a very important concept there, because how it impacts the environment, as you probably already, if you extract and get all the tailings out of hard rock mining, you dig in a mine, it's out of the mountain, you have to extract all the rest of the rocks, and you have even the process of extracting the gold away from all the different types of rocks you don't want, particularly using mercury, and you throw it out, and it's hundreds of millions of pounds. There is chemicals that are dangerous to humans and everybody else, and wildlife. So just consider this concept of extracting, all right? With that being said, let's get back to Boggsville. And again, the women. All right. The women brought forth already, they were out down there in part of New Mexico, Taos, right? And I believe that Anita described them as being kind of the socialites of the town there. But I think there's something else to it than that. I think that there is the aspect of the cultural aspect. So let's get to the agriculture. So they dug a ditch, tar box ditch. All right. Where did the idea come from? All right. Was it the men, Thomas Boggs? Was he was he an engineer?
Unlikely.
No, neither what was Thomas Boggs? Well, who was John Wesley Powers? Of course, who was Kit Carson? These were men who did what everybody else did, just did a little bit better, or their story were told a lot better because of the iconic perspective that was put on them in the American West. They extracted furs and then cattle. It sure wasn't farming. So where did this farm, the concept of this farm, the canal, come from? And it's pretty good. The perspective of that has been put on the men. Well, because they married these men, and then we talk about that, and then it goes to them. All right. Well, they didn't know how to farm. They had no idea how to dig a ditch. Other than if they married in and they already were together and been intermarriage with a different culture. And that was from Malda. And of course, that was Amache Ochini Powers. Who was she? Cheyenne. So here's what I'm getting at. So as I probably already hit with you guys several times already, the center of the area where this group became their own cultural identity, to be honest with you, Nuevo Mexicanos, the area really is a good example of what geographic area we're talking about is San Luis Valley. Really, that's mostly in the southern part of Colorado and the northern part of the boundary. but also the area still, because of the mountains and because of the water, but of course with the indigenous, the nations, that became separate eventually over centuries, different area and different group of people. And that means culturally too. They had their own set of systems within agriculture, not just within the process of irrigation, but it tied in with their sense of family and culture. And I believe that's what the women brought to the Boggsville with, the men. So here's what I think it was: a ditch that was put tar box ditch, because where what they had already in the area. So it was called, and some of my police help me. I tell you, I spent about listening to YouTube videos on an acequia. What is an acequia? So this is basically an irrigation ditch, all right, that was used to farm in the areas, but it was different from what we see now mostly here around the country. Well, communal. So different people together. It wasn't individual owners within the land grant. All right, the Ahito, all right, and the unique irrigation system and management. This was something the Spanish colonists brought in, but it's different system of canals and ditches, but also learned because of contact with, for example, the Pueblo Indians. Did the Pueblo Indians, or the Navajo, have a particular type of farming or irrigation? I think there's evidence that. Yes, with shared farming practices and crops. Of course, you see the intermarriage. We can't totally. No, I mean, who's going to do all the work? I think it was Romaldo, for example, that brought this knowledge to Boggsville. And wasn't just knowledge, it was that culture, because now we get to consider who was it and how was it exactly that they built this ditch. Okay, was it, we can't think, it was oxen with a plow, right? By the mid part of the 19th century, we didn't have yet the steam-powered big bulldozers. Okay, we didn't have that yet. By the time, as we get to the 1890s or so, you'll start to see that. Gas-powered, actually. But they oxen and plow, digging these ditches. But I believe it was like more like a family, all right, Nuevo Mexicanos. And they shared the water at certain times, and they flooded their fields at certain times, managed by Mayordomo. That is something I believe this type of information has not yet been told at Boggsville, but the evidence suggests that because of the women and where they came from and who they were. All right. It's important to see this as we get to the point of, well, as you already see by the 1880s and 1890s, you see the ranchers coming in, encroaching upon the different type of ranching with from the white settlers. All right. Does everybody have any questions? Or there's something I need to tell you before I continue with what I just said. To say that this is new information would probably be an understatement, as you can see of what Anita told you, all right, within at least what is told there. She told you what she tells everybody, the tourists that goes to Boggsville. A few years ago, Senator Gardner asked the National Park Service to look at feasibility of turning it into a national park of some sort. So I think now it's just still it is a National Historic Landmark, but it's not directly managed by the National Park. That just means protecting the buildings but that's something Anita's trying to do. And I haven't told her this. I don't think anybody else knows, except you guys now. So you're the first to know. So as far as the evidence for this is still indirect, they have to find actual if Thomas Boggs or Romaldo or Amache or Kit Carson's, Josepha Carson's, if they did a diary or letters or written anything down, or if there's a map, this is still kind of circumstantial, but really the evidence rather strong. I know why I've been told. I already know why, but it's going past our class. So, any questions? Remarks? Okay. Here's the part that, let me see here. What do I got? That was probably the main gist of what I wanted to put out. All right, let's see. What time is it? Okay, 11:08. Not even an hour. So it's important to understand, we need to get, before we get into, really, I think I'm building up to week 4 is supposed to be in the Dust Bowl. But I haven't even discussed what are the effects of diverting water from the Arkansas River Empire, and the sugar beets, and the area of what I refer to as Little Chihuahua. I look like I'm starting to get a little bit behind. So I think I mentioned about homesteading already. So this is almost, is this similar to what I described with the land grants and then the communal farmlands of Boggsville? What's the difference here? What exactly is homesteading compared to the communal type of agriculture that we see with Nuevo Mexicanos?
It's giving land to individuals, and there's kind of a almost a competitiveness about it. Like you have to improve it to keep it, that sort of thing. And so there's less of this drive, partly because it is a difference of culture. All these Anglo people coming in, but also you want to keep your land, and so you got to improve it. And so there's a little bit less of an incentive to work together to keep the land managed.
Yes. Let me ask some silly question. When the U.S., the new floundering country of the U.S., bought the land in Louisiana Purchase from the French, from Napoleon, who owned that land after its purchase? The U.S. The U.S. owned land. Thomas Jefferson, what did he do? That he had this vast amount of land. What did he do to try to make sure that, how did he show that the U.S. owned it? What did he do? Or who did he tell someone to do?
He sent Lewis and Clark out to survey it. He sent surveyors out.
Yes. It was a very general type of survey, but also there was a couple others. So there was others they went up to the northern side, but you saw Zebulon Pike, 1806, come through this area with his exploration. And but also the very western boundaries of this Louisiana Purchase that they were concerned about, like, for example, most specifically Zebulon Pike, was to find for sure where that western boundary was. And usually a boundary is a river or a river or mountains, so that Pike was actually looking for a particular river that was supposed to be on the western boundary of Louisiana Purchase. And with that, including finding out where the Spanish were, which they already felt there was going to be a threat to or encroaching upon that land, that Louisiana Purchase. And now you see after 1848 with all of American Southwest, same deal. If you see the Homestead Act, 1862, this was actually putting a grid square on the land, all right? But most specifically, this was public land. Once you grab all this land, belongs to the U.S., but it's public land. Different than probably initially from when the 13 colonies started up before, the American Revolution. It was the colonies that and the farms owned the land. Individuals start owning land, but as U.S. was started and the Louisiana Purchase, and then out to the west, it was public land. So in order to enforce that and get it all nice and neat and get homesteaded, which means you come onto the land and you take some time, 2 or 3 years, 5 years, with a certain amount of acres, you farm it, and you put a house on it. You put pigs and horses and cattle and barn, and you do something with the land, farming it, and you get a patent, land claim, homestead. I won't worry about this too much. So what you saw was the General Land Office was established after the Homestead Act, 1862, to do all the surveys, all right? And most of these surveys you'll see a big square on the map, and it shows one section, which is 640 acres and 1 square mile. That's 1 square mile. And usually within that 640 acres, how much was 160 acres within that section was a homestead. This is a different type other than homesteading and farming. Here you are, what is the difference here? This is Timber Culture Act, Timber Culture Claim. What is it? It's putting in trees. Really, it's planting trees for like fruit trees, or just regular trees for wood and lumber. Keep this in mind because once we get to Grenada, I'll show you an example of this. All right. So let me see where I'm at here, and let me talk about a little bit about aridity, and then I'll talk about aspect of labor. So what is difference between the eastern seaboard of the U.S. and then like as you get out to where it's Louisiana Purchase land, and then the American West, and with the purchase or after the treaty, all the land from the American Southwest and get taken away in 1848 with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. What type of land is it compared to the East? A lot of the explorers that came over to look at, moved west to do these things for Thomas Jefferson or anybody else, or like the people coming over to settle, like initially the Oregon Trail, those white settlers moving into the Pacific Northwest, and Zebulon Pike, they always came at a certain time of year, early in the spring or so, out of the Independence, Missouri, the Santa Fe Trail, Oregon Trail. There are several trails of settlements, or settlers, I should say. And they, by the time they arrived here in this area, for example, of the Midwest, so you get to the point of Kansas, Nebraska, you see prairie land and all this buffalo. But as soon as you get to words like the Colorado and the portion of Pueblo in that area, the Arkansas River, they showed up about late summer. And the creeks and the rivers had already expended all their spring runoff. And in spring, early spring, late spring, you still see the grasses and plants, flowers, green. But when they showed up late summer, everything was looking like a desert because it was just already late summer and hot. So they call it the Great American Desert. So that is because of the aridity, which really is simple. It's just less rain. With less rain going down on the ground, the soil itself is different, except around the very area edges of the river and the floodplain. You'll see different soil. Of course, a lot of that soil was fertile, but only out from the extent of even 2 or 3 miles. You'll start to see the soil is different. It's more sandy, but you see certain type of grasses that are growing because those grasses have adapted to maybe thousands of years of only a certain amount of rain and certain type of soil and the nutrients. So literally got grasses like the prairie lands of the Midwest just growing in an extent of what is ecologically provided to them. I hope that explains decently. All right, so let's just, I want to get into water next week. I think I already introduced that, and let's finish out with your questions, but also how are we going to start looking at labor? I think I had one more slide about labor. Okay, I want to kind of go back to what you guys, I hope you have a chance to look at some of the videos I uploaded, had Professor Montoya talking at one of the lectures. Did anybody get a chance to watch those yet? Okay, she talked about Ludlow there. Oh, and her dissertation on Ludlow Massacre and how it really started to define in modern aspects what is labor. And what you could do, and I think I did it, I guess, accidentally, is labor, as we just saw a moment ago, how is labor looked at with perhaps at Boggsville as compared to what we'll see, for example, later on in 1914 in industry and labor there. What is the difference? Let's go, what was it labor in Boggsville? Okay, so it was cultural, it was communal. So you have family or very close friends. So then you had family who came in the area of what in New Mexico, it was bringing together, it was families, wasn't individual ownership. If the mayor, it was the mayor domo that mattered. So you see how still the water is where the source of power is, right? If you're agriculture. Can everybody hear me? Okay. All right. So Mayor Domo was part of that family. That was that group of family. And it was the ditches and the water being diverted in small amounts as close to where the springs were, where the water could be slightly diverted. But he chose certain times for each particular individual plots. But it was the community, that family that owned that land within that land grant. Okay. And whenever the mayor domo, if he was gone, he or she was gone, somebody else would replace that person. Sometimes it was the wife of the mayor. So they knew that water, so the water was treated, differently with what ownership. So it's a big difference. And grabbing it, and it was with how ownership of the land was looked upon, and that was individual. But one of the things it brought was this concept of, with the Great American Desert, because of all the several hundred years, from Europe, what do you call it? Scientific revolution, industrial revolution, as going out there to the great American desert, but it is our missing part that we will turn this land into paradise. We'll turn the land differently into farming, into animals, and it will turn green, and it'll be more rain. That's how they thought, the white settlers. It was, if bring in this seed, we grow it, corn, whatever, including the cattle, it will rain more. That's how I thought. Okay, that kind of concept wasn't with the land grants. So let's get back to what was the Ludlow Massacre, and really it was different cultural groups, but they were mining coal, and there was a little bit of conflict when they went on strike. Because of why would they go on strike? Because there was a modern concept of this: you work for a certain amount of time and you get a wage. So by that time, it was measurable to the point of only having the Colorado Fuel and Iron make a huge profit, Rockefeller. So the wages weren't really comparable to how they were working. The work was dangerous. The work was literally killing them. Okay, so went on strike. What was the response to that strike? Eventually, the governor calling up the Colorado National Guard. Initially, they went out there just to make peace, be the peacekeepers between the mining company and the miners and their families. But eventually, they sided with Rockefeller and the mining company, and it just turned violent. So that's, again, the concept of extraction. So you're extracting somebody's labor, as you can see. So there were the miners who were extracting the actual coal. The coal was used to make, what do you call it, coke for making steel. So in Pebble, there was the steel mill, but they were also processing the coal to make coke, to process to make steel from the iron. Of course, it takes a lot of heat. Miners were extracting the coal, and it was the mining company extracting labor from them. But they wanted to say, no, I want better wages. You're going to extract labor from me, but I want something more reciprocal in regards to being able to take care of my family, and being less dangerous, so I can live a little bit longer, or healthcare. Here's a concept that I think you all need to continue on with this class, is that the healthcare, health, other than shelter. Of course, it affects the family overall. So I hope I bring to the table for you guys today, you're starting to see a good picture of where we'll be going here with the agriculture part, Arkansas Valley. If you can see that. Any questions or comments? So really, it's just how was somebody's labor looked upon differently, other than what on the, was it looked upon as extracting, as far as those communal farmlands? How is it looked upon? Looked upon religiously. What was the Catholic, or being Catholic, did that perspective on agriculture influence the way they grew their land, or grew farm crops? Yes. I'm trying to take a moment of pause to give you guys to think about it, and then spiritual. There's spirit. Okay, so cultural aspects of this, and I want you to. This is going to even continue on as we get to the part of later with the sugar beet industry, with the just bringing of other non-indigenous food items, how hard it was to break that out in order for these companies to make as much money as they wanted to. But something to look through. I can probably explain that a little better later on, as far as religious or spiritual kind of thing. But next week we'll try to get. I hope you guys are starting to. I didn't get into how the book you had read for the last 3 weeks. So let's spend about 5-10 minutes talking about that. What did you guys think of Elevations?
Well, I think there was certain chapters that I enjoyed more so than others. Like a chapter on Leadville I enjoyed, but when they were talking more about history, about certain aspects, when he was just talking about like how he was trying to stay faithful to his wife. And,
I agree.
Not to go into that one lady's hotel. It just seemed a bit much.
Well, a little too autobiographical, or was biographical?
It's just like I guess he's trying to add to his story, but it's the information I don't need.
Okay, so what for you wasn't relevant? That's something I was wondering about. Did it? So it didn't really help for you as far as when he was going down the Arkansas River, and then for you it seemed like he just stopped and talked about his personal life.
Yeah.
Didn't really tie in with it how he was or where he was where he was at the river. Anybody else have anything with what he said about that, or how? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. With the like bits of personal information kind of wedged in there, it was kind of difficult for me to read in some times, because it'd be like, oh, the history, and I'd start to get into that, and then it'd be like I was kind of drawn out of that.
Really?
Kind of suddenly, it felt like. It's like, wait a minute, it feels like two different stories, kind of.
Yeah, so that did fit well in that kind of almost different genre, literary genre, trying to mold that into one narrative. Yeah. Well, anybody else have the same kind of view or something, or was that this personal exploration you found that okay? Anybody? I'm sure somebody's got it.
There are certain moments where his personal experiences were good, like the moment when he's in Canyon City and he stopped by the security force. That was pretty interesting, but there's just some moments that are relevant, and then there's other moments where I just couldn't care less.
Did it get? I guess the main reason why I had you all read this is that I wanted you, because I know we couldn't get you all out to the river, do a field trip. The object was to get to replace that as somewhat of an alternative. Was that able to, like, you started out first week, did it help out to get your mind and where I wanted you all as far as down here in the Arkansas Valley?
I think so. And definitely, you get a sense of how humans have really affected the and its flow, and how healthy or not healthy it is.
Yeah. Who found it? Who was there anybody who couldn't relate at all, which is fine. Who had an issue with just totally not relating with an aspect of being there in your imagination or even personally? I mean, yeah. Okay. So you've some aspect you did find it helpful. I think for me, my 2 cents was I thought the book was he was going to spend more time kayaking. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And more of the ecological description of wildlife and the plants along the shore. Instead, he spent a lot of time with that, not so much the personal aspect. I found I was able to somewhat relate to that and help me go down, like I'm kind of sort of going down the river. But I didn't know he was going to touch upon the basically a history of Colorado, as you saw. I didn't know he was going to spend a lot of time or I didn't know he was going to spend that much time describing the Sand Creek Massacre, which you all now have a reasonable, informed decision on that, I guess. Who was put off of it totally with just because, it was a certain, whatever, scholastic, or I'm a journalist kind of guy. I want to. Did anybody feel like he was trying to conquer once again the land or the water? I was kind of concerned about. I think, well, a little bit, and I think I wanted you all to maybe in your mind say what's going on here, or again, what would happen if somebody else went down the river, or no, I ain't going to be kayaking. What does that help with,
Mhm.
Well, I hoped it helped. I hoped that kind of just gave you some more literary. It's okay to give you a literary aspect to this course. Derek, I haven't heard much from you. I'm just kind of. You all right? How's the class going, by the way, with them? What is it? What other book you like to read?
No, I've been having computer issues, so I finally got it situated where I'm back.
Okay.
One kept kicking me off of Zoom every single time I got in 20 minutes in.
I'm just no. It usually I go with my ear listens to what if nobody's saying any. That's cool. Because that either tells me, well, I guess that the book was okay. Good. I would very much like to see what you have to say, good or bad, with the discussion response with that. Now, you do not need to do. I'm not talking about doing a book report. I don't need pick something small from it that you found intriguing or you got really mad about. And yeah, I like to hear different perspectives on that. I did. There was some things I was concerned about. I didn't. His writing as a journalist was pretty cool. Very, very, very nice prose, I guess you could say. Hope nobody got offended by the vulgar words, something, poop or something. Hope anybody get offended by it. There's just something I need to readjust. Okay.
He did seem to kind of almost lose interest in the river by the time he got to Wichita.
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, that's the part I felt that brought in this somewhat problematic Western gaze kind of aspect. Like, I'm getting close to I decided not to kayak over at the Pueblo Reservoir because I had already kayaked in all kinds of man-made reservoirs. So I decided not to. I'm like, no, that's not.
Well, and I'm from Wichita, and so I know a lot about the history of the river there. And so he starts out talking about, early on where he's talking about how, humans have affected the river, and he thinks about that a little bit. But when you get to Wichita, he's like, nothing. In Wichita, the river has a long history of being horribly polluted. And right now is the cleanest it's been since the 1870s.
Yeah.
But he doesn't talk about that at all. He's done talking about that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that once he got to the later half, towards the end of the book, I think that his he really did describe, them. See if I guess it's fair to say, because I'm from Eastern Oregon, he ran into those rednecks. I hope that doesn't. Anyway, okay. Had the guns. He described it really very well. Now I'm from, like I just said, I know exactly who he's talking about. I don't wish to. I'm with, I don't want to feel like I'm isolated from that, but did describe very well in that aspect, the social aspects there. Victoria? Okay. She's kind of frozen up there.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Let's anybody got anything else for elevations? I really don't want to okay. So I owe you all for next week to play a little bit of catch up, to a little bit, and I'm not going to, because I almost felt like bringing in a little bit more of the primary sources for later that was going to provide later more of the 1960s and 70s. Upload that for y'all, but y'all felt more reasonably comfortable with what has been provided to you so far. If you don't feel that way, let me know. I do listen to feedback as we go through here. I am not I am, well, I guess the captain of the ship, so to speak, because, have to get through shallow part of the river because but y'all are part of the crew. Wow, what a bad analogy. I will. There was going to be there was like a laundry list of stuff that was going to be in the syllabus of things that were I thought that we need to look at, that you'll see it's going to be why you would want to make a choice between a statement of need or protest. But somebody close to me told, no, that needs taken out. That's part of the content of the course. So what I'm thinking of going ahead and doing is putting that up on Blackboard. Things that are already listed here in week 3 about La Colonia. So there were the sugar beet industry that came in, actively recruited and established colonies. So there were colonies of Mexican nationals, but from like Texas, Mexican Americans. All right. And I think what I'm going to start doing now, as we get closer and closer, we're going to go into how it was still the part that was problematic on a racial or prejudicial side historically. So, but also how the identity, how they identified themselves later on, to where, okay, no, like for example, those within the Chicano movement, that was something that tied into that, the several centuries back to Mexico and Aztlan. describing themselves as Chicana or Chicana. So we'll get in there. So anybody have any questions? I know I almost used a whole amount of time here. I hope y'all have a okay time on Zoom here. And I do expect a little, okay, I want to, last bit of announcement, if there's no other questions. I want to make sure that the time that you spend now, of course, attendance here is mandatory as far as your, towards the class and grading, but also the amount of time you spend on Blackboard and now online. Okay, data, don't forget, and I think I put in the syllabus, the Blackboard is extension of me as your teacher, and because I can't get out all the information that I feel is important here in this class. And I believe there might later on be an adjustment of the time we spend all together on Zoom and more on Blackboard, more discussion. I would hope that if I put something on the discussion forums, you guys will respond to that, but also collaborate with each other. I hope you also saw that. I encourage you to do as a group, but your work as individual as part of that group, or individually too. I think that part is important, especially if somebody who feels right now that you want to maintain or toe the line, or they're just getting anybody at that point where I just really want to just do this protest thing, or was that like that before? Oh wow, okay. The goal is to bring to the table towards the end of the semester, by the middle part, new evidence, a new problem, or new challenge, or the same challenge, and get to the extent that, yeah, this trying to do an oral history project, that's not enough. We're not going to be good. I want that motivation, that that sense of something, because I want I don't know if that's going to be the goal of the class, but at least something to provide a different avenue of approach for your voice. All right, I will stand by once again. Well, I was going to say, yeah, so time online is going to be where now we're ramped up, and you need to start looking at the stuff I put on there, and then start putting stuff on Zotero. All right, so it's just not the hour and 50 minutes, hour and 20 minutes of Zoom twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday. You need to start looking at all the sources and the slides. I'll get the slides up. I got this recorded. All right, I'll stand by. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you Tuesday.
All right. Bye.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
day.
I have a question. It's not for the course though.
Okay.
I'll grab it. So 1 second. So I'll be taking your modern China class next semester, but I found these rice coupons from the research I've done.
Yeah.
And do you know anything more about them?
What's on the other side? Okay, so I believe that would be the malware because of the stars and there in the
Right, yeah. That's what I assume as well. But
where'd you get those?
I found them in a book I ordered off Amazon.
So you see there the illustration of with the older man's hand extended out straight with the child, looks like, or student, and you see aspects, symbolism of industry, and I guess maybe military planes. Yeah, so as far as the actual period, it could be either, well, it looked relatively new. There's a lot of different aspects within the Mao. I know it's the Mao era, but whether or not it was in the 50s and is somewhere around his Great Leap Forward or the Cultural Revolution, I'm not real sure. Yeah, but I know it's the sense of socialist or Maoist imagery that he has there. He had his own sense of. He wrote his own book on communism, and that was Maoism, nearly a religion. So that kind of imagery is definitely indicative. That ain't definitely ain't traditional Chinese anything.
Right.
It might have been a rationing rice. So that could have been any time.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. One of the I just have no idea if to tell if it's like authentic or not.
Oh, well, as far as its authenticity,
because I don't know. I'm looking at it and I can find other pictures online, but it looks like Monopoly money. So
yeah. Thanks for showing me that. It's really interesting. But well, I mean, the archives there at the library, CSU Pueblo, has Chinese propaganda posters. Their original Asian history professor, her name was Spade. She was collected all them posters when she was a professor and did whatever trips to China. She donated them to the archives there a few years ago. Well, I don't know how long ago, a decade ago. And I had the last class look at them and do their own interpretation of it. And, what part of the history of China was it? Modern China. And yeah, that's great. Maybe bring that in and we'll iron out whether or not they're real.
yeah. I was just curious. I showed Weller a while ago and he recommended me asking you about it.
Yeah. I hope that I think I had like 9 or so in the class last time. 2 years ago. And the class is only every other year. But thanks for showing me that.
Hey, you're welcome.
No, it gets my mom. I have to still get the syllabus ready. That's in the fall.
Yeah, well, it still's a ways off. Still
And
gotta
hopefully
finish
it'll
this.
be back on campus. Gosh, I hope so.
I hope so as well. I'm not set up for the Zoom stuff.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Hopefully, yeah. Then you guys check out those Chinese posters. And,
Yeah.
and they're pretty cool actually. That because it's like the art, at least artistry, whether or not if you look at it subjectively or objectively, I mean it's a lot more colors.
Right.
A lot more now red.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Got anything else?
No, overall, class is going well, I think.
That really got me motivated to get something started on there. I usually got my books ready for that, but I need it's always the syllabus. All right.
Oh, well.
All right.
I think overall.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, have a good one.
Yeah.